Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. We've got you covered. Traditional leagues, dynasty leagues, PPR leagues, IDP league, even daily fantasy football league. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
What is up? Welcome into the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Tom Dougherty. This podcast is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Hope you guys enjoyed my last episode where I did a couple simulated live mock drafts. If you haven't listened to those, go back and tune into the show from Tuesday. I just went through a couple different drafts, a couple different scenarios. I thought today I would try and find a mock draft where it would let me do an individual defensive player. I haven't been able to find one yet. Maybe I can do it as I go throughout this show. However, I did find something interesting that we can talk about today on this podcast, as it is April 19th, a Thursday. We are officially 1 week away exactly from the NFL draft, the first day of the NFL draft. However, on this fantasy podcast, fantasy football podcast, we do talk about the NFL and the players in the NFL already as well. I mean, there's going to be some guys, probably Saquon and Darius Guice will be some guys that you'll probably have some fantasy implications coming into this year. Maybe a Christian Kirk. But that's really about it. No, nothing really big on the offensive side regarding massive skill players to draft. I mean, the quarterbacks are probably all going to take a year to develop. Maybe a Sam Darnold, if he gets picked first overall, will start. I don't know if anybody's going to be inclined to draft him. Maybe as a backup. We can talk about that as we go along. But on this show, we're going to talk a lot about some of those who have increased their value during the offseason, and some players who could be coming up for big seasons now that they have been traded or changed teams during the offseason, signed with a different team in free agency, and we'll be going through each of them throughout the show. Maybe I'll even find, if we have time, I'll find a mock draft that allows for individual defensive players, as we did one last time that was more of just the teams by themselves. Individual teams versus, just picking a team as your defense. So we'll see if we can find one that has the individual defensive players, because I surely would want to draft like a Von Miller or a Deverson Griffith or Rhodes or even a David Baird from the Titans. A lot of good defensive players out there, especially, and even the ones from the draft. I advise you guys to go look at the if you are in an individual defensive league, defensive player league, where you have you get to pick a linebacker, a defensive end, a safety. If you want to pick a couple guys who nobody really knows about, go listen to my college football show from yesterday, the fantasy football, or not, the GSMC football show from yesterday. It was the college football edition I did yesterday, and we talked a lot about some of the incoming talent, especially on the defensive side. A lot of talent coming into from the draft on the defensive side, and probably will drop into most of these guys, especially with all the quarterbacks we're going to be seeing at the beginning of the draft. A lot of these guys are probably going to be going on teams that are already pretty established and are going to fit right in and probably be pretty successful. So a lot of talent out there on the defensive side, especially defensive line talent coming into this draft. All right. So first off, this segment, we're going to go over some guys that have had are probably going to have some big fantasy implications coming up this season due to the fact that they have changed teams. Number one is going to be Kirk Cousins. He is coming into a team on the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, yeah, he's always been a pretty good fantasy guy, viable quarterback. If you're talking about quarterbacks, definitely something you want to think about when you're comes to matchups and stuff like that, Kirk Cousins has been a quarterback who could put up monster fantasy numbers, even in for the Redskins. But he's always been a guy who needs to have those weapons on the outside. When he had Deshaun Jackson, when he had Pierre Garçon on those Redskin teams, even in a healthy Jordan Reed on those Redskin teams, he would put up some serious numbers for fantasy. He's going to have those weapons this year on the Minnesota Vikings. He's going to have the Stephon Diggs. He's going to have the Adam Thielen. He's going to have a tight end in Rudolph. It's not Zach Rudolph, just Rudolph. Kyle Rudolph. There we go. Kyle Rudolph. And then obviously the two running backs in the backfield with Latavius Murray and Dalvin Cook. So you'll be able to have a lot of guys around him that are going to catch some balls, be able to take some pressure off of him when it comes to the running game, being a mix and match. They're going to have a great defense to get him back on the field quickly. So he's going to have lots of opportunities to succeed in this season when it comes to fantasy and rack up the points, because, they're going to have a balanced offense. They're going to be able to throw out of the backfield as well. So when it comes to quarterbacks, if you're thinking about a guy maybe as a backup, or if you're looking at the waiver wire, if your quarterback is having a bye week or gets injured and Kirk Cousins is sitting there, take a flyer on him. Take a look at him. See who he's playing. See if he's a guy who does. Obviously, everybody does better against teams that have bad passing. It's just stats, bad passing defenses, but that's just statistics. But I wouldn't start him in a Monday night game. He's just the guy who hasn't been able to win that big game on national television and on a regular basis. But on just a regular Sunday, Minnesota's playing a bad defensive team, and we know what teams they're playing. The schedules are going to be coming out. I believe this on Saturday. I think they're going to be coming out with the actual schedules, the week-to-week schedules. We'll see who is playing who when. We know the opponents are going to be. We know the home away opponents for each team, but we just don't know when in the year they're going to be playing each other. So I'm interested to see definitely who Kirk Cousins is going to be facing. In his first game as a Redskin. All right, next guy up is a former Redskin, and now he's going to be going over to Silicon Valley and playing for the 49ers in Santa Clara at Levi Stadium, and he's going to be getting in the coaching into the offensive scheme that is the brainchild of Kyle Shanahan and Jerick McKinnon, who signed with the Niners for a pretty good. That's a good contract, honestly. A little above market. But I believe I think he's an upgrade to Carlos Hyde. Got a little more speed, get a little more ability out of the backfield, catch balls, to be elusive, make those linebackers have to run around, give those linebackers fits throughout the whole game. So it's going to be interesting seeing how Jerick McKinnon fits in with the Niners. But I think he's going to be able to be a guy who's going to be close to an every down back. They also have Matt Breida, so it's going to be a nice little tandem there in San Francisco, or Santa Clara if you want to be exact. But they're still the San Francisco 49ers. But yeah, no, he's going to be a guy who is going to definitely improve, I believe, throughout the season, and as he gets along with that Kyle Shanahan offense, something that a lot of people, a lot of fantasy experts, a lot of talking heads, pundits have been able to see that he's going to be improving through free agency. Another guy, I'm seeing his name all over the place as why that he could have a renaissance year, another year because of the team he went to. But Michael Crabtree signed with the Baltimore Ravens. They lost a bunch of their receiving talent when it comes to over the years they had. Remember when they used to have Torrey Smith and Anquan Bolden and Jacoby Jones. Now it's going to be like Crabtree, who's also always had good hands, always had good elusiveness, be able to get away and get open. But with Joe Flacco now, it's looking like he could be definitely a big play potential. Flacco likes to throw it deep. When it got Crabtree going down the sideline, take the top off the defense. So maybe a little renaissance year. Crabtree gets back in the good graces of fantasy owners and can get into the end zone. He'll be stepping out from underneath the shadow or the prowess that is Amari Cooper and the Raiders, who's also looking to have a bounce back year in Oakland. But he'll be the number one. Crabtree should be the number one receiver in Baltimore coming into the season. Next up, Allen Hurns. He'll probably be number one receiver as well for the Dallas Cowboys as he goes to play for Jerry Jones and it's gonna be a nice little security blanket for Dak Prescott. I think he's definitely, now that Dez Bryant's gone, definitely a little better probably as a receiver for Dez Bryant as then Dez Bryant, but for Dak Prescott, we'll see how he comes back and coming off of a late signing as he gets over to Dallas from the Jaguars. But Allen Hurns should definitely be able to prop his numbers up as Dak is the guy who can get you the ball in the intermediate routes. I mean, he's going to be able to look off those safeties. He's a good managing quarterback. So, I mean, we'll see how he likes to throw to Mr. Hurns throughout the season. He also loves throwing it to Cole Beasley in those little shorter intermediate routes and letting him get those yards after the catch, and obviously the stalwart and Jason Witten at tight end to be his other security blanket. But I think Allen Hurns will be a dynamic receiver for him on the outside. They also still have Terrence Williams too on the other side, so those guys can definitely play off each other, give Dak some options as they go down the field. But Allen Hurns, probably a later round pick if you're looking at a receiver. If you need some bench help, that would probably be definitely the second wide receiver in Dallas. Next up, Green Bay. They signed Jimmy Graham. I mean, you gotta love Jimmy Graham if he's having a guy like Aaron Rodgers throw to him. I mean, I know in Seattle that their offensive scheme, the way they used him in Seattle wasn't as great for fantasy implications. He was in a lot in blocking, did a lot of chip blocks, kind of rolled out later in routes, didn't have those deeper seam routes like you saw him run in New Orleans, and where Drew Brees where it was able to tear up defenses with him down the seam, get him against safeties and linebackers, get those good matchups. Now you're going to probably see that again in Green Bay. I know it's been reported that Aaron Rodgers didn't. I don't know if he didn't. What's not to like? It's Jimmy Graham. I know Aaron Rodgers is coming out and saying that they didn't do exactly what he wanted to do in free agency, but I feel like now it's every year Aaron Rodgers has something to say about what the Green Bay Packers do in free agency and how they don't consult him during the free agency period when they have the ability to sign players. He's probably just more upset that they cut Jordy Nelson and the fact that he signed with Oakland. I mean, 2-3 days later. So, that's probably his biggest beef. But he's going to be getting Jimmy Graham, and Jimmy Graham should have another pop year after kind of being dormant fantasy-wise in Seattle, probably just due to their packages. I mean, the tight ends in Green Bay definitely have a little more involvement. Not as much in their blocking, just a lot more like same kind of thing. You're going to see those seam routes and more of those corner routes coming where he's going to be matched up against a safety or a linebacker. And the guy having a guy like Aaron Rodgers throwing to you is only going to help, and it's going to help you get more and more passes, and he'll probably be a threat also in the red zone as he always has been in his career, especially when you had a guy of the caliber of Drew Brees throwing to you, and now you're going to have the same kind of thing with Aaron Rodgers. I think another guy to talk about, Allen Robinson is going to the Bears. He's going to be definitely a guy for Mitchell Trubisky to throw to and be more comfortable with as they get along. It is a young quarterback, so I wouldn't put him as high up there as those other guys regarding free agents changing teams and becoming better, having more fantasy impact than they did last year. Allen Robinson coming off the injury, Robinson is a good. He's a solid wide receiver. He's probably going to be that. He's probably going to get in there at least to wide receiver 1 or 2 in Chicago. But when you have a rookie quarterback throwing to you, or he's not going to be a second-year quarterback now throwing to you, there's always going to be question marks regarding consistency on this fantasy level. On the side of you have to err on the side of caution when it comes to Mr. Robinson there in Chicago, now in a Bears uniform. Anybody else? I'm thinking here as I go down my list of free agents. We have a lot of trades. We had some trades coming over. Obviously you got Jarvis Landry now in Cleveland. Obviously, it's going to be a really big deal on seeing as to where he is. Who's the guy going to be throwing the ball to him in Cleveland as to where they're going to be going in the draft. whether it's going to be Tyrod for this year, they're going to have the rookie sit behind Tyrod Taylor for a year, or they're going to have Sam Darnold come in and just get right after it. I mean, if you're Jarvis Landry, you got to just be ready for anybody, I guess. He did have Jay Cutler thrown to him last year, and he didn't have it wasn't a bad fantasy year. It was pretty, for a receiver, he had a decent year, so like that. If you are a guy who is looking to get Jarvis Landry maybe mid to late rounds, if he's still available, he'll get picked, but it just depends how far he's going to drop in your respective drafts, and obviously depending on all the different variables to go with fantasy drafts. Drafting is different for every kind of league, whether it's how many teams in the league, what kind of scoring your league has, and the amount of players you need and have on your roster. All right, so that'll wrap it up for this segment. Next segment, we're going to talk probably some more about some free agents that switch teams, and some guys on some new teams that are going to look to have some better fantasy years, or carry over their fantasy success from their previous team. So, and then I'll be still looking for that other mock draft that has individual defensive players, and if I can get one of those, we'll do one of those as throughout maybe at the back end of the show in the last couple segments. So we'll be right back with all of that.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Talked about some guys on some new teams. In this segment, actually, we're going to talk about some guys returning from injury. We have a bunch of them, actually. And talk about just how they're going to bounce back off of injury from last year. And then we have guys like Julian Edelman, Dalvin Cook, David Johnson, Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson's a big one. He's a big one. I've seen a lot of even early draft boards, him being ranked as high as number 4. I don't know if you listened to the show on Tuesday, you know that I was doing those mock drafts, and he was up there. All those big boards for this, even for the mock drafts, had him at number 4 quarterback ranking. I think just behind Aaron Rodgers and Carson Wentz, and then maybe even probably Brady. But Carson Wentz, I don't know how he's going to start this season. That's another guy who just forgot about him. He's coming off an injury. But yeah, we have there's a lot talked about there. Actually, that's probably this whole segment talking about guys just looking to bounce back from a lost season last year. I wouldn't call Carson Wentz's season a lost season last year, getting hurt pretty late into the season. But it looks like that he's already been throwing the ball around. He's already looking like he's rehabbing pretty well. He should be back. I don't think he's going to start. We'll see how he gets through OTAs that are going on right now. These are the non-mandatory voluntary OTAs. And then coming up in the fall for training camp, I believe he'll probably be in limited duty throughout the training camp with Nick Foles taking most of the first team reps, as he will probably be starting the season. With those ACL injuries, those knee injuries, they usually take about 8 months to a year for that rehab. So I don't think he's going to take him a full year. He's a guy. He's definitely going to try and accelerate his time back. But what are they? I think a lot of people are saying week 3, week 4 for Carson Wentz to be back on the field. I don't think he's going to be coming back quite as soon as he looks like he's dealing with a new offensive coordinator. Frank Wright went to Indianapolis after after the Colts were scorned by Josh McDaniels. But Frank Wright now in Indy, new offensive coordinator. But he's just going to be interesting to see how he is going to sit back and heal up for that return that everybody is kind of highly touting. I mean, it looks like we don't know. He's going to be he's obviously hoping for a week 1 return as he gets through training camp coming in this summer and then late this summer and getting into the early fall. But I mean, those knee injuries, you got to be careful. When you're a guy like Carson Wentz, you're a franchise guy, you're a perennial Pro Bowler, looking like maybe even the Eagles can get back into that Super Bowl conversation, and maybe even be a team that could repeat as Super Bowl champions. I mean, you're going to have a healthy Carson Wentz during the whole season, unless you want to just see if lightning can strike twice and you can get a guy like Nick Foles to do what he did last year again. I don't know about that, but you obviously want to have Carson Wentz healthy the whole season. We always want to have people healthy. We don't like people getting hurt at all, especially in fantasy. It kind of just ruins your fantasy. Like, I mean, I had Aaron Rodgers get hurt in the middle of the year. Still won the league, but I mean, that's because of some great quarterback mixing matching and also some Todd Gurley help. But yes, I mean, speaking of running backs like Todd Gurley, you got a guy, David Johnson, who's going to be up there in the draft boards, even probably even coming back off an injury. It wasn't a leg injury; it was a arm. I mean, it was his hand or his wrist injury. So it's nothing to do with his legs or shoulder or anything like that. Where it's going to be more of a nagging wear and tear injury. He's going to come back probably just fine this year, and even better as he had a full year off of just no wear and tear on the legs. He's going to be fresh and ready to have another breakout season for the Cardinals in Arizona, and he's going to probably be up there. I mean, I think he was like number 5 or 6 on the rankings for the drafts. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if, I mean, especially people drafting late after seeing him go through training camp and the preseason, to see his draft stock actually even improve and get up maybe into those higher picks in the first round. So depending it depends obviously how much you like Le'Veon Bell and Ezekiel Elliott and even Todd Gurley, whose name is at the top of those draft boards as well. So David Johnson, a guy to look out for. I mentioned Deshaun Watson. He's going to be somebody who, I mean, they've already come out and said that. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins came out and said that they're going to be the best dynamic duo in the NFL this coming season. And I mean, I would love to see that. I had DeAndre Hopkins last year, and he actually did not do bad even without Deshaun for most of the season. So probably be a guy I would think about taking again this season. I don't know if we're going to do a keeper league, but for those with a keeper league, if you had Deshaun Watson last year, I mean, if you had DeAndre Hopkins last year, you might want to think about keeping him, depending on which round you picked him in. That's probably what we're going to get to in the next segment, is talking about keeper leagues and how to get the most value out of your keeper pick. So continuing on through these guys who were coming back off of injuries, we had Dalvin Cook being another one, as he had his season with the Vikings cut short early with an injury. As he looks to bounce back, he's going to be up in that dual tandem with Latavius Murray, but Cook will likely be the number 1 guy. I mean, it's going to be a nice little duo with him and Kirk Cousins as they try to get the Vikings back into the NFC Championship game and look for a little better result than last year. But they definitely have the roster for it. I mean, that's going to be a team that's going to be using the play action a lot. It's going to be working off the running game, giving Kirk Cousins some easy throws. Like I said, Kirk Cousins is a guy we talked about last segment, is the fact that he could be a big fantasy player this year with those weapons he has on the outside, especially, and also with the running game to offset it and get those linebackers. I mean, football, sometimes the offense it's not simple. It's never simple, but you can make it simple. If you have a great running back tandem or a great running back quarterback combination where you're making those linebackers suck into the middle of that defense into the coming up to the line, jump to the line, you can exploit that middle of the field and give your quarterback a lot of easy passes, a lot of easy throws, especially when you have receivers like Stephon Diggs and Thielen who already get open and easy enough themselves. But if you can create holes in the zone, make those linebackers bite on those play action plays, and also use your use your running backs out of the backfield. So, yeah, got to use Dalvin Cook, got to use Latavius Murray. We're hoping everybody stays healthy and can keep staying healthy throughout their recoveries of these injuries. The other guy, Julian Edelman, coming back for the Patriots as he returns from that. He had the ACL injury as well, and it's looking like he's going to be a guy for Tom Brady, who actually, there was reports out yesterday that Tom Brady hasn't even committed to playing for the Patriots in 2018. I think that's just like mumbo jumbo. They're just putting it out there because Tom's being Tom, and they're trying to put some pushback on Bill Belichick. But it's just whatever. Him and Gronk are both not playing in these non-mandatory, these voluntary team activities. But Julian Edelman, a guy who is coming back off that injury, looking like he can try and be another guy who could just get back into that good realm. He did, tore the ACL the preseason and be on track for a return early in the season, if not week 1, and be another guy who can make an impact on your team, whether it's in the flex or kind of mixing and matching through him, depending on the defenses he's facing in that particular week. With receivers, it's good to have a nice little gaggle of receivers on your team. I like to have an even number of receivers and running backs. Maybe have one more running back, because you could use, especially if you have a flex position in your league, where you can kind of decide, okay, who has a better matchup this week. It obviously depends on PPR as well. If it's not PPR, then I would have much more of a surplus of running backs than receivers. But Julian Edelman always is a guy who's been able to get some yards out of the catch. Good speed receiver, has a great duo with Tom Brady. They have a presence of mind where they just kind of like can read each other's minds, and Edelman will find the little soft spot in the zone, or he'll be able to get away from the man-to-man, know how to get open for Brady to find him down the field, and he likes to get in the end zone too. So lots of points there for Julian Edelman. Waiting if he could stay healthy and come back. Tom Brady does get older, but like I said, in PPR leagues in those formats, he's very valuable and can even be worth that second slot for your wide receiver. All right. Another guy, he's coming off injury. Odell Beckham Jr. is definitely coming off injury, as he had that ankle issue last year. And is he going to be able to get back to where he was before? Is he going to be back to that? I don't think he's a first round receiver. Maybe late first round if you have the 10th pick and he could drop to you and there's no more running backs left, elite running backs left. You can take him. I would take Deshaun. I keep saying Deshaun because Deshaun Watson's his quarterback. I'd take DeAndre Hopkins over him. Obviously, AB over him. But he's got Eli Manning still thrown to him, and you got to make the best out of that. I guess he puts up, if he can have a breakout season. I don't think it's in the cards right now. He's going to have to figure it out with the new quarterback coming up in the next few years, and then obviously ODB is turning into this kind of a diva quarterback where he's more about himself than the team and more about himself than getting in the end zone, making sure that he's not fighting with a kicking net this season, and it could stay. Obviously, the best ability is availability, especially when it comes to fantasy. So he's going to be able to stay healthy. He's looking for that long-term contract, but he got that broken ankle last year, and those are tough to come back from. He's always been a speed guy, been a guy who can separate himself from the DBs and have that difference of speed where he can get away and have those long distance runs after the catch and get into the end zone. Also very elusive with his cuts, and all that has to do with making sure his ankle is good and healthy. So I think I saw some video of him running a little bit of some double move routes where he's working that ankle back in. Those are not easy when you have a sore ankle, especially after a surgery or after a break down there. So he's going to be probably a little ginger coming into the season, but still probably worth that maybe mid-second round pick, late first-round pick, and just because that's just how the talent pool works out in the NFL. These other guys in value, but he's got the name. The name carries a lot, especially in the fantasy drafts, but especially with those who aren't too intuitive when it comes to research and stuff like that, if you're just doing it with your friends. But with those guys who do those professional fantasy drafts out there, you'll probably see his draft stock drop a lot in those leagues due to the fact that, we're unsure or we don't know how well he's going to come back. We don't like the quarterbacks thrown to him. We don't think it's very reliable, and we could find more value in other places and other players. All right. We talked about Dalvin Cook. We talked about David Johnson. Deshaun Watson is coming back from injury. He should be just fine. I think he's got some great talent. I mean, he really popped last year, didn't he? I mean, he's a great quarterback. I mean, we've watched him all the way since college. Came back, beat Alabama. Nothing can phase the kid. He's got a great arm. It looks like him and DeAndre Hopkins have a great little understanding together. We'll see if they can just put the league on notice this coming season. I mean, if the Texans defense can stay healthy, they'll see a lot of Deshaun Watson on the field, and he'll probably be racking up those points. As you see, he already broke a bunch of records in just the short amount of games he played last season before the injury. But we'll see if he can stay healthy, and that's his second ACL, I think. Now he's torn, so everyone gets your knees can get a little more wobbly. Maybe he's to become that pocket passer that we like to see in the NFL, and then just move when he needs to move. So take a book out of that Russell Wilson book. Take a page out of that Russell Wilson book and get more comfortable throwing in the pocket, which I think he actually is. That's why he had a lot of success last year. But we'll probably see the Texans limiting his running game. I'm not going to see him run around like you see Cam Newton run around when he's back there for the Panthers. So Deshaun Watson, another guy to keep your eye out for. As I said, he already is like number 4 in a lot of those big board for the big draft board. So the quarterbacks, honestly, they're kind of more of a dime a dozen this year, especially coming in. I mean, Drew Brees, I think, was like 9th on the draft board, which is crazy. So I mean, we're probably going to wait anyways on those quarterbacks. Sean probably will be maybe mid to late rounds, especially depending on what kind of prowess or skill level your league is at. So that's going to do it for this segment. We're going to come back and talk about we're going to talk about some keeper leagues, some dynasty leagues, and see how what the best way to decide which player to keep, and depending on which round, and different rules regarding that, and have your value keep on going throughout the years with those keeper picks. So we'll be right back with all of that.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA Podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. We have gone over a bunch of players in the first 2 segments here. Players that are going to be on new teams, whether it's via free agency or trade. A couple guys were traded during the offseason, and a bunch signed with new teams. And then we went over some guys that are coming back from injury in 2018, looking to pop again in these fantasy football rankings and rack up those points. Be a guy, especially guys like David Johnson, or then you have guys like Dalvin Cook who still want to show off their talents and get into the good graces of the fantasy owners and become a top pick. All right, in this segment, we're going to go over, though, for those who have been in dynasty leagues or keeper leagues or what have you, how to best value out your pick. Because usually keeper leagues, how it works is if you pick you pick your player to keep. So, for example, my league this year will be a keeper league, and I'm likely going to keep Todd Gurley because I picked Todd Gurley in the 3rd round. So that means that's my pick for the 3rd round this year. It's going to be Todd Gurley again. Nobody can pick Todd Gurley in the 1st round. He's going to be up there amongst the guys in those top rankings even in the 1st round. So nobody can touch him. I mean, he's going to be my pick in the third round, which means I still get a pick in the first round instead of keeping a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who I could keep. That'd be my first round pick. I would be without a first round pick, and then I would be kind of saddled with having to decide who I'd want to figure out who to take for running back and receiver in the second and third round. So probably just going to wait on a quarterback anyways this season. But I mean, the thing is, even if I keep Todd Gurley, I could pick Aaron Rodgers in the first round anyways if I wanted to. So just saying, but that's how it kind of works for keeper leagues. You want to find your player that performed the best for you at the latest round possible. So who was your best value pick last year? Who was your best value pick last year? Or who was your best value pick up? If you had a guy who you want to keep on your team that you picked up on waivers, you still get all your picks. It would become your 17th round pick or 18th round pick, depending on how many players you have in your league. You would lose your last round pick, basically. Whatever the last round is, if you decide to keep one of the players you picked on waivers, that means you lose your last round pick, likely in most leagues, if that's how the rules set up. I can't speak for all the leagues. So there are the different leagues with different rules, but mostly that's how it works for keeper leagues in around the fantasy football world. And but yeah, so you want to find your player. So say you got a guy like Todd Gurley in the third round. That's my best example is me, because it's honestly perfect. For my situation, it's honestly perfect. But I mean, even if you got a quarterback, like let's say you picked Deshaun Watson last year in like the 7th round, and you want him for this year again, keep him, because that means you still get your first 6 round picks. And then you take a little break during the 7th round. I already got my quarterback. I'm good. You can, and then you can start drafting accordingly. Like me, I'm going to not have a third round pick, but my first 2 picks in the first and second round, depending on what the draft order is, I'll be looking probably for a big, I can get 10. I'll be able to have, if I say I pick in the first 5 picks, I can take Zeke or Le'Veon or whatever may have you, David Johnson in the first few picks, and then I'll have 2 top running backs because I kept Todd Gurley from last year, and he's my third round pick. And in the second round, I could go for a receiver. So, I mean, that's just kind of how it works when it comes to those first round picks. And don't keep your first round pick, basically, unless your first round pick is Zeke or Le'Veon, and you really want them to be on your team still. Don't keep your first round pick, because then you're basically out. If your first round pick was a quarterback, don't keep your first round pick, no matter who it is. If your first round pick was a quarterback, don't keep him, because you could still take him anyways in the first round. If you keep a guy from a later round, you always want to pick whoever your first pick. The guy in your keeper league, the guy you decide to keep. I mean, at least third round or later. I mean, honestly, I kind of wish I could take somebody who's even later in the draft. But obviously, Gurley, that's such a value pick in the third round. I'm gonna keep him in that third round right there. Boom. And do it again. Even though, I mean, you never know. He's kind of a volatile guy. That's why I was kind of debating. But he's pretty volatile. I mean, I think even the top. I mean, it's that Tom McShay, or Tom McShay. That's the mock draft guy for ESPN. The Sean McVay offense that really just made Todd Gurley pop this past season, and I think he's going to probably just do it again, because it's just the way that offense works for him, catching balls out of the backfield and being able to get off defenses on their heels and then just run it right down their throats. So that's what I'm thinking when it comes to those keeper leagues and those when it comes to the dynasty leagues, when you're going to be, I mean, if you there's some leagues I think they even let you keep 2 players, so it gets kind of crazy, but always look for most value late in the draft. I mean, where did you get the most value last year? If you picked Alvin Kamara, like I know some people picked Alvin Kamara or Ezekiel Elliott because he was suspended. This is actually going to be a really interesting year for keeper leagues, because Ezekiel Elliott was suspended last year. So a lot of teams, I know a guy in my league, I think picked him like in the 5th round or something. So you're going to keep him, and then you're going to have all your first 4 picks, and then you'll just be like, oh, there's Zeke in the 5th round, so you only be able to get Zeke. I think that's actually interesting because I know in my league, the guy who picked Zeke also got Le'Veon Bell first overall pick. So he's going to have to decide who does he want to keep. That's going to be a tough decision for him, but I think you got to keep the guy I picked later and then maybe roll the dice, say, hey, you're going to get the second pick overall again. It's all random, which pick you're going to get. So it's interesting to see what the decision is going to be there. But I mean, the best case scenario, you have a guy you picked up off waivers who popped for you last season, or you think is going to have a big year this year, as a highly touted draft pick this season, and you can have him, just keep him and store him down there at the 17th pick, tag him there, or if you're a guy who in your league from last year decided to take a chance on Zeke, even though he was going to miss 6 games regardless, and have him be your whatever pick. I mean, say you picked him in the 5th round or 6th round or 7th round, you can have him be that guy, and then you still have all your picks to load up on the rest of your talent. Like I don't know. I think I picked Deshaun. I keep saying Deshaun. I picked DeAndre Hopkins in the 2nd round, so I might have to let him go. I'm pretty much already set on what I'm going to do, but there's a lot of different options you can do there. But yeah, it's always just try and find value in those later rounds, and then work your way through the draft until you get there, because you're going to basically want to just keep him down there in that late round, and then you can say, I mean, it escalates, so you can keep doing it for the next year. Or say you find somebody who popped. I think that one of the bigger guys, like I mentioned, Alvin Kamara, that's going to be a big guy this year too. That's why I said it's just going to be interesting seeing this year. You had a lot of guys who were picked down in the draft have good years last year. Doesn't mean he's going to have a good year this year. No correlation into saying that, but even a guy, I mean, David Johnson was obviously picked up high, but then got hurt. So I would just let him go. Try and find somebody else in at least your third, fourth, fifth round or later who did well for you last year, or you think is going to have a breakout season this year, and then just stick with them. Yeah, the Ezekiel Elliott thought. I just thought of that actually. That's gonna be really interesting. I would keep Zeke if I was in that position. If I had Le'Veon and Zeke last year, and I picked Zeke in the 5th round or the 6th round. Doesn't matter. Anything later than the 3rd round. If I picked Zeke in that round, I definitely would be keeping him and then just praying that I would get a good pick and be able to get another good running back. And then you'd have Zeke, and you wouldn't have Todd Gurley because I have Todd Gurley. But you could have Zeke and Kareem Hunt, or Zeke and David Johnson, or Zeke and Le'Veon, or Zeke and if you pick in 4th or 3rd or 4th, you can take Antonio Brown or something like that. So you could that's the thing about Keeper League, is how you can get a nice little tandem on top of your team there to lead your team down to victory. So I'll be trying to defend my title this year for sure. Looking good though, because I like the fact that I got that value pick. Even the 3rd round, I still have the 1st and 2nd rounds to get some top flight guys. And I mean, you never know in a snake draft. Honestly, picking later isn't the worst thing, because then picking later isn't the worst thing, because then say even in a 10-man league, if you pick 8th, you get the 8th pick and the 12th pick. So, or the 13th pick, right? Because it goes 8, 9, 10, and then 11, 12 is 9 and 10 again. Yeah, 13th pick. You get the 8th pick and the 13th pick. So that wouldn't be bad at all. Versus being like, if you're early, if you're like the 2nd pick, you get the second. Yeah, you do get the 2nd pick, which is nice. But then you don't pick again till the 19th pick. So yeah, that'll be a way. So you get the 2nd best player and the 19th best player, but not even, because we're doing a keeper league, and a lot of those best players are going to be gone. So that's also changes your draft strategy too. So they're going to be guys who are going to be untouchable, and you're going to be like, oh, I normally would pick him, but sorry, don't get to do that. It changes your whole draft strategy, and you have to start figuring out some backup plans, and you're going to see guys go a lot earlier in the draft. But assuming most of your teammates or league mates have listened to me and aren't picking to keep their guys from the 1st round. I mean, unless you have Le'Veon and nobody else, or if you picked Antonio Brown, even if you picked Antonio Brown first round, I wouldn't keep him. I'd find somebody else. Find a running back deeper in the draft that played well for you. I wouldn't pick him anyways. Like Aaron Rodgers in the first round. I think I had DeAndre Hopkins second round. I mean, I just would wait, see if you can get them again in the draft the old-fashioned way. Keep your best valued pick until in that draft, and especially if it's a later round pick. Late round picks, most value. That's who you're going to keep, so you can still try and use that crapshoot that it is in the first 2 rounds to get somebody valuable up there too. So you always want to keep your first 2 picks, because the value of those picks is always more than that. It's like a regular NFL draft. You want to keep it's kind of reverse. There's no trading picks in fantasy football drafts, but there's more value when it comes to keeper leagues. There's more value in the pick in the first 2 rounds than it would be just that one player. I mean, there's a couple guys, like I said, maybe Le'Veon, maybe Antonio Brown. Probably not even Antonio Brown, though. And then maybe if you pick Zeke early in the draft, I wouldn't do it. Even if I had picked Todd Gurley first pick overall, or first round in the first round last year. If I had picked Todd Gurley in the first round last year, even though I don't think anybody did, because he was coming off a pretty weak season. That was his big outbreak year last year. But even if somebody did magically pick Todd Gurley in the first round last year, I wouldn't keep him. I'd find somebody else later in the Browns and later in the draft that I had pop for my team. All right, that'll wrap it up for this segment. We're probably gonna keep that. We'll do the individual defensive player mock draft thing next week, probably, as I did find one, but there's a lot of different moving parts to it, so I got to figure it out. I'll probably get it all nice and set up for you guys on Tuesday next week. So this next segment, we're gonna go over some news and speculate some more stuff. We'll probably go over the quarterback rankings as we see. Deshaun Watson is up there. When to draft a quarterback, when not to draft a quarterback. Do you wait? Do you mix and match? And we're going to talk about that when we get back.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. We got some rankings now. We're talking about quarterbacks in this segment. We're talking about a couple different things. Quarterbacks in this segment, because quarterbacks, there's tiers. Obviously, there's different tiers of quarterbacks. There's different tiers of fantasy quarterbacks. I mean, there's guys who are good in the clutch. There's guys who got good weapons around them. There's guys who just put up numbers, whether their teams win or not. So, I don't know. We're going to go over some of these consensus. There's consensus draft lists, these pre-draft rankings, these consensus rankings that are taking into account a lot of different experts and drafts all over the place, or rankings all over the place. It is consensus of all these different experts. I think it's like 21 different experts. We're going to go over. I mean, they have Russell Wilson too. I don't like that. I played somebody who had Russell Wilson last year. He's so volatile. The whole Seattle defense offense was volatile last year. The thing about fantasy is consistency. Availability, best ability, yes, is availability. So is consistency. Consistency is what you want in fantasy. You don't want to be like, oh, my guy scored 25 last week, or what have you. Whatever. I'm just kind of in the middle. Depending on what your scoring is, that's a good scoring day. 25 last week, and then he's going to do it again next week. Nope, 10. 9, single digits, whatever. That was Russell Wilson last year. He doesn't throw picks. He doesn't get in trouble. He doesn't get negative points, but he gets more valuable points from the running game, which is why he's up there in the rankings. And yeah, he's Russell Wilson. He's a great quarterback, but he's just very volatile when it comes to points and how much he's going to put up. So, I mean, if you're going to draft Russell Wilson, you better have a backup ready, or you're going to mix and match that backup, draft him, dropping in, adding when it comes to your backup quarterback or your number 2 quarterback. See, matchups are always going to take precedent when it comes to the quarterback starter for me. I mean, every league has a projection, so whether you use Yahoo or ESPN or whatever fantasy program you use, they all have projections, and the projections, sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. I always try and okay, let's get our highest projection highest team projection total as possible when it comes to who you're going to start. But it's also, you got to look at the matchups, and you got to look at the points against, points allowed, and by each team. That's what actually probably gives. That's a real stat. But most fantasy programs give you is the points allowed and the rankings on points allowed from a certain position. I mean, that's a real stat, and especially as you get throughout the season, it becomes more and more accurate as to how vulnerable each defense is to certain positions. And I mean, Russell Wilson, he's sitting at number 2 right now in the rankings, obviously behind the great Aaron Rodgers at number 1. I mean, he's going to be number 1. That's kind of just the way it is. But then you have Tom Brady, the ageless wonder, who apparently has not said he wants to play for the Patriots again next year, but he likely will. Everybody's saying it's all pointing that way, but for some reason there's been reports saying that he hasn't committed to playing for the Patriots. Maybe it's just a shot at Bill Belichick, whatever. Maybe they're playing. There's some serious dysfunction in New England. Most we've seen in ever. So when it comes to dysfunction in New England for the Patriots. Deshaun Watson sitting at 4. I've been talking about that all day. All show how Deshaun Watson is ranked 4th right now, and I think it's because he's just a combination. Nobody can beat that combination of running ability and passing. He put up some serious numbers last year, and if you were able to snag Deshaun Watson, whether you snagged him late in the draft or you got him off the waiver wire for the games he played in before he got hurt, you were winning that week. Probably most likely you were winning that week, because he put up some serious numbers last year when it comes to touchdowns. I mean, the guy was a touchdown machine. I think he broke the record for most touchdowns in a 4 or 5 week span, I think. But definitely a machine when it comes to touchdowns. I mean, average draft ranking is 5.1. So, I mean, for a quarterback, not bad. So, I mean, after him, you got Newton, Wentz, Breeze, Cousins. That's your second tier of quarterback right there, probably behind the top 3 guys I was talking about before. But I think Carson Wentz, honestly, the reason he's down there, I would put him above Cam Newton, in my own opinion. I'd put him above Cam Newton. I definitely would put him up. Even coming off the injury, just more thinking about it. Cam Newton is a guy who, he had a great season, won the MVP, got his team to the Super Bowl, but he doesn't throw. He's not accurate enough. He throws these lasers of throws, but he has a tendency to get wild when he's throwing down the field. Doesn't get rid of the ball fast enough. Has the tendency to hold on to the ball a lot, take sacks. Likes to run around a lot. I mean, loses lots of yards. I mean, we'll see if he can come back. He's a great talent, big dude. I mean, you gotta love the size on the guy. He's always been a good talent, even watching him in college. But now that he's been in the league for so long, he hasn't really made the adjustments that you need to make as an NFL veteran, because these teams, they do adjust to you, and they're going to get used to you. They're going to get used to you running around, and you're a powerful guy. They're going to have designed runs for you. But you got to keep yourself healthy. You got to keep yourself being able to get out there on the field. Again, best ability is availability, and he has a tendency to play through injuries and stuff like that, but you got to be able to stay healthy. You can't play through them all, Cam. And we need you out there. Want you out there. You are a very talented quarterback. You're ranked up in the top 10 for a reason. So, but I put Wentz on top of him. I put Wentz at 5, maybe Cam at 7, with Breeze at 6. So that's in my opinion. They got Cousins sitting at 8. So I would agree with that. Actually, Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback, especially now. We talked about him in the first segment. He's going to have a nice season this year. I mean, even in his first year at in Minnesota, he's going to learn all their stuff. He's going to get it down. He's a smart guy, well-read guy. I mean, I remember watching him at Michigan State. He was just a very calming feeling in the backfield. I mean, hopefully in that huddle especially too, hopefully he can get on the horse when it comes to winning big games on national television, because he's going to get a couple of them this season, especially with the fact that the Minnesota is the Super Bowl favorite coming into the year. So, I mean, I don't know if he could take him to the Super Bowl, but this isn't a show about that. This is a show about fantasy sports and the fact that he can rack up some points and definitely going to have the weapons to be able to do that. As we continue looking down the list, Stafford and Roethlisberger top off that third tier of quarterback. That's about right. Then you got Jimmy G right underneath them. I think we're probably going to see we might have to see throughout the season if Jimmy Garoppolo is going to leapfrog those guys, maybe leapfrog himself even into that second tier of quarterback. The only thing is that we just don't know. He had limited sample size when it comes to Jimmy Garoppolo. Had a great season, great end of the season last year with the San Francisco 49ers coming into that year. I mean, he's been touted as the savior for that franchise. I mean, this is some big expectations there for him. So if he can live up to them, the sky's the limit for him, especially with that Kyle Shanahan run offense. You got to like that if you're a 49er fan. But if you're also a guy who's going to be thinking about drafting Jimmy G, you got to like the fact that they're going to have Pierre Garçon coming back on the outside. They re-signed Marquise Goodwin. You're going to have a guy like Jerick McKinnon out of the backfield for him to throw to, which is going to be nice because he's got speed back and have the ability to get away from those linebackers, get open, get some more yards after the catch. I mean, that's all it is. You want those yards, and you want to be able to get guys in the end zone. And that's how quarterbacks score points. And in fantasy sports, the fantasy football, you got to get in the end zone for those quarterbacks. That's the big money points for them, and you got to get those 40-yard passes. So you're going to have a guy like Marquise Goodwin taking the top off the defense, get those big long plays. And then also you saw a lot last year with watching the Niners being out here in California, be able to watch the Niners more often than not. Jimmy G had a lot of those over the middle, kind of the middle of that defense would really open up for him to be able to get it to whether it's Trent Taylor, that good little slot receiver they got out of Texas Tech, or if they get Greg Kittle, the tight end out of Iowa, open over the middle as well. He can pop it for those 40-yard plays, you get those bonuses, especially, assuming you're in a league with the 40-yard bonuses, most of them, it's pretty standard now in fantasy sports, you get those 40 or 50-yard bonuses. You got to like that if you're a Niner, a guy who's, Niner fan, obviously, but if you're a guy who's thinking about drafting Jimmy G, especially in that 12-man league, he's sitting there at 11. I mean, he's sitting right above. Interesting. Looking at he's sitting right above Andrew Luck and Jared Goff, both guys who. Well, Andrew Luck is coming off an injury. That's the guy I probably should have talked about a little bit at the beginning of the show more. The fact that he's coming off an injury. I think I talked about him a good amount on previous shows. That we have this. I mean, it's always a question. The fact that he hasn't thrown a real size football yet. He's still working his shoulder back into good health. But Jared Goff, definitely another guy who had a great breakout season last year. He probably is down in the rankings a little bit compared to Jimmy G due to the probably some expected regression when it comes to this. It comes to the Rams in general, but. If you're a guy looking for a quarterback, I mean, these guys, that's why I said don't draft the quarterback early, because there's so many of them, and you're probably going to be able to be successful with pretty much any one of them. As we continue down the list, we haven't even gotten to a guy like Philip Rivers, who has had some great fantasy success. I've seen him start in a lot of weeks for teams that I've played against my leagues, that he puts up great fantasy points. Philip Rivers, guy who likes to throw the ball down the field, gets in the end zone, got some good weapons out there down there in LA, obviously. Can't call them the San Diego Chargers. They're the Los Angeles Chargers with Keenan Allen. And they got they have another good receiver. I can't think of his name right now off the top of my head, which kind of sucks. I wish I could, but yeah, they have some good weapons out there for the Chargers as they continue to play in that little soccer stadium, which actually I bet you is a pretty cool experience. It's very intimate, and but yeah, they're playing right now at the Home Depot Stadium in Carson, where the LA Galaxy play while they wait for their big, gigantic, awesome stadium to be built down in Inglewood to share with the Rams. So Philip Rivers, another guy. As we complete the top 15, that's what I'll probably go over today. Is you see Matt Ryan, actually, he's 17th on this list. 17th. That's how far he's dropped now after he lost Kyle Shanahan. But the thing is, he's still a good value. He's still a guy you can have as a second quarterback to mix and match with the guy you pick first. I mean, there's no 17-man leagues. There's 17. That's 17 decent quarterbacks that can get your team points. That could help your team. And if you at any point, I mean, right now 15th is Dak Prescott. I mean, I feel like he's more of a game manager, but he can get in the end zone. He scores a lot of points. He can get in the end zone. He can throw the ball to Zeke on a little screen pass. I mean, he can get the ball into the end zone and in the red zone. He's a very good red zone precision passer. Also can run the ball in himself. But I mean, when it comes to just expected points value for Dak, I think he drops down a little. He should probably drop down a little further. I think that he's more in that 17th ranking, where Matt Ryan can be up more in the 15th because he just throws the ball more. Versus in Dallas, they're going to be giving the ball to Zeke and having him run it into the end zone pretty much at any point. At any point on the field, especially inside the 10-yard line. So that's going to take some points away from Dak. The last thing you want to see, if you have Dak Prescott and you're playing a guy with Ezekiel Elliott, is him hand the ball off to Zeke, because he's probably going to get paid or have the points offset and have him throw like a little screen. So with Zeke, you want him to get it into a receiver in the end zone. Yeah. That's interesting. But yeah, we got through most of the quarterbacks. There's plenty more quarterbacks. I haven't gotten to Patrick Mahomes. Actually is up there, 19. Yeah, Marcus Mariota, and then the kind of the back end of your quarterback lists as we get down to the end there of the list. No real names to note, as they're probably going to be guys that are either going to get picked up due to injury or if they're playing the Browns or something. But the Browns defense actually looks like it's going to be not the team to match up against this year. Maybe we're going to have to find another team to exploit on when it comes to picking up a quarterback late or during week to week and finding a guy to start. So we'll figure that out as we get closer and closer to the season, especially after the draft, which is the NFL draft, the actual draft, which is going to happen a week from today. It's going to be very exciting to see finally which quarterback is going to go where. I'm still seeing Josh Allen's name in the Browns. Josh Allen going number 1 overall. I guess so. I don't know what. I mean, yeah, he's durable. He's probably good for that weather. I mean, yeah, that's the one thing I'll say if you're the Browns, that you do play in the AFC North, and you're going to play in Pittsburgh, you're going to play in Cincinnati, you're going to play in Baltimore twice. I mean, and you're going to play at home in that cold Cleveland every year. So getting a guy like Josh Allen who's sturdy like that and can throw the ball through the wind, I mean, I don't knock that, but he's definitely got to be able to learn some touch and some ability, and maybe he could be even a good fantasy quarterback later in the years. But that basically hopefully giving Sam Darnold to the New York Giants, which if they don't pick Sam Darnold at 2, if he's available, that's an issue right there. So that'll end this episode of the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. We'll be back on Tuesday for another installment, and I'll probably be doing another couple of mock drafts for you guys live as I broadcast here at the GSMC Podcast Network. Yeah, to do some mock drafts with the individual defensive players. I'll get that all set up for you guys on Tuesday. So until then, everybody have a good weekend and enjoy some football, and keep getting your pre-draft rankings set up, and just keep tinkering as we get closer and closer to your draft weekend.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.